We can all together agree to eliminate female genital mutilation, which remains one of the most serious violations of human rights of women and girls. I would like to restate my personal commitment and that of the government of Kenya to providing the leadership necessary to ensure that this practice ends within this generation. In April this year, we signed a landmark declaration between the governments of Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Somalia, and Ethiopia to address cross-border FGM practice. And last week, we signed an agreement with religious and cultural elders from Kenya to eliminate FGM by 2022. I also believe that we can all commit to eliminate violence against women and girls. A woman has a 1 in 3 chance of experiencing physical or sexual violence in her lifetime. This is a major gap in our development record as a global community. Since 1994, Kenya has enacted laws that focus on the eradication of gender-based violence and harmful practices, which include the Prevention Act against Domestic Violence of 2015. Further, I believe that we can all commit to eliminate child marriages. The percentage of young women between 20 and 24 years of age who are married before their 18th birthday has declined from 34% in 1994 to 25% in 2019. But the absolute number of girls under 18 who are at risk of child marriages is estimated at 10.3 million in 2019. In Kenya, 23% of girls are married before their 18th birthday. Early marriages denies our girls a chance to achieve their full potential in education and limits their socio-economic contribution. Kenya joins other nations in celebrating the progress made since Cairo. We have achieved universal access to free primary and secondary education, and indeed this year, we achieved 100% transition from primary to secondary education. Further, we have achieved gender parity in both primary and secondary schools. On health, I am happy to say that we have dramatically reduced child and infant mortality, and maternity services and health services for children below 1 year are free in all government health institutions. Reduction in maternal mortality has been steady but slower, has steadily decreased but at a slower pace, from 698 in 1994 to 362 per 100,000 births, live births today, while the contraceptive prevalence rate has doubled. We are here today to once again rededicate ourselves to the commitments made in Cairo. We are here to celebrate progress made in the last 25 years and to make new commitments to complete the unfinished agenda. As we do so, let us bear in mind the fact that the most important participants in this summit are actually not in this conference. And you may be wondering who I am referring to. I am referring to the 1 in 5 women from all corners of the world that this year alone will experience gender-based violence, most likely from someone who is close to them. The 800 women and girls who die every day during pregnancy or childbirth, and the 4 million girls who every year have to endure the painful and traumatic effects of female genital mutilation. We are talking about the more than 33,000 girls who are married off every day before the age of 18, and the millions of unemployed youth with limited hope for their future. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us deliberate over the next 3 days, and let our deliberations be guided by the needs, the aspirations, and the unrealized potential of those individuals who are not here. I also believe that we can also, together, commit to accelerate the reduction in maternal deaths. Progress has been much slower than projected in 1994. The death of a mother during pregnancy or while giving birth significantly reduces the chances of her children to survive and thrive. And yet, as we are demonstrating through Kenya's First Lady's Beyond Zero program, most maternal deaths can be prevented with proper antenatal care, skilled delivery at birth, and access to emergency obstetric care. The world faces increased health threats, including threats from reproductive cancers such as breast, cervical, and prostate cancer. And there are also growing environmental pressures, including the urgent threat of climate change. This has made the commitments of Cairo more urgent and indeed more complex. To complete the unfinished agenda, therefore, requires us to develop new partnerships, mobilize political support, increase the level of international and domestic financing, and accelerate implementation of innovative and supportive interventions. Fortunately, there is a greater international commitment and cooperation to address these issues. The Sustainable Development Goals have provided a comprehensive international platform to systematically advance the Cairo agenda. We also have more scientific and research evidence on what works and better technologies to guide and support policy. Women are the backbone of the family and indeed the bedrock of a nation. And because our women are the gatekeepers to family health, They exert such a powerful influence on intergenerational outcomes for their children. Empowering women essentially empowers all our families. It empowers our societies. It empowers our nations, and it empowers the world. This was one of the essence of the first International Conference on Population Development that was held in Cairo in 1994. The conference highlighted the linkages between population, poverty reduction, and sustainable development. It emphasized the value of investing in women and girls, both as an end in itself, but also as a key to improving the quality of life for everyone. Kenya commits to doing the following over the next decade to achieve the goals of the ICPD program of action. The first is to enhance the country's population and development programs through increased budgetary allocations, efficient implementation of programs and projects, and integration of population issues into the formulation, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of all policies, programs relating to sustainable development at national, county, and sub-county levels by the year 2030. 2, to ensure that all citizens attain the highest possible standard of health, and this will entail elimination of the following preventable maternal and newborn mortality: mother-to-child transmission of HIV, teenage pregnancy, and new adolescent and youth HIV infections by 2030. 3, improve support to older persons, persons with disabilities, orphans, and vulnerable children by increasing the core social protection investment from 0.8% of gross domestic product to at least 2% over the next 10 years. 4, to enhance the capacity of relevant government institutions to increase availability and accessibility to high-quality, timely, and reliable population and related data at national, county, and sub-county levels, disaggregated by income, gender, age, ethnicity, migratory status, disability, and geographic location by 2030. 5, to harness the demographic dividend through investment in health and citizen well-being, education and skill training, employment creation and entrepreneurship, rights and governance, and empowerment of young people by 2022, as outlined in Kenya's demographic dividend roadmap. 6, to attain universal basic education by ensuring 100% transition of pupils, including those with special needs and disabilities, from early learning to secondary education. And in addition, the country will enhance the quality of basic education by fully implementing our competency-based curricula. 7, to improve the employability and life skills of our young people by enhancing quality and relevance of technical vocational education and training in partnership with industries and private sector. Fully implement the competency-based curriculum so that learners are equipped with relevant competencies and skills from an early stage for sustainable development by 2030. 9, to eliminate female genital mutilation by 2022. In addition, the country will eliminate all forms of gender-based violence and harmful practices by 2030 through the strengthening of coordination mechanisms and addressing social, cultural norms that propagate these practices. Ten, to ensure universal access to quality reproductive health services, including prevention and management of gender-based violence in humanitarian and fragile contexts by 2030. And 11, to track, monitor the implementation of ICPD25 Nairobi Summit commitments through the National Council for Population and Development in the State Department for Planning, provided that the commitments are in keeping with Kenya's Constitution, socio-cultural values, and national ethos. Ladies and gentlemen, these are my and Kenya's commitment to accelerate the promises made in Cairo 25 years ago.
We cannot return to a time when women had little say in reproductive issues, or for that matter, in any area of their lives. I think we can all agree that ICPD was a turning point, a defining moment in our history. In Cairo, the world articulated a bold new vision about the relationship between population, development, and individual well-being, and the empowering of women and meeting people's needs for education and health, including sexual and reproductive health, are necessary for both individual advancement and balanced development. And I think we can all agree and be thankful for that in 1994, we stood united on such a visionary and common agenda. An agenda that paved the way for a more just, prosperous, and sustainable future. An agenda that acknowledged that people, women and men, mothers and fathers, were the best judges, guided by knowledge and access in terms of how many children to bring into the world, if to have children, and the spacing of them.
Let us applaud feminists and activists. You ignited a movement from Cairo to Beijing, and until today, you champion rights and choices for every girl so that she may fulfill her dreams. Thank you. And I urge us to heed the interests of that young girl and the solutions that we devise, her interests, as we commit in those Nairobi commitments that we announce, her interests in decisions we take in the days to come. The way forward is by focusing on one number only. And for UNFPA, that number is 0. 0 unmet need for contraception, so that every woman and adolescent girl decides for herself whether, when to get pregnant, how many children to have. 0 preventable maternal deaths, so that no woman will have to die for want of reproductive care.
Denmark commits to continue being at the very front of the fight for the right of all women and girls, especially their sexual and reproductive health and rights. I am proud to announce, on behalf of my government, our commitment to continue to work for the ICPD agenda at both international and national level. Denmark commits to, first, increase funding to international organizations working for the ICPD agenda within service, delivery, and advocacy with 225 million Danish kroner, including an extra 100 million Danish kroner to UNFPA in 2019. That is close to $15 extra here and now in 2019 to the UNFPA. Secondly, we team up with UNFPA to make sure that we follow up on the Nairobi summit, to make everybody accountable for the commitments made, to make sure that we have fulfilled the promise of Cairo by 2030. Third, organize with UN Women a Nordic Youth Conference in Copenhagen in May as part of the preparation for Beijing Plus 25, with a view to continue the celebration and promotion of women and girls' rights. Fourth, at national level, launch a new nationwide counseling service for youth who are victims of dating violence. Fifth, at national level, make hymen reconstruction illegal to once and for all. Get rid of this harmful practice. An important partner in finishing the unfinished business of the ICPD in UN.
The UNFPA management and staff reaffirm and renew our commitment to the full ICPD program of action during this 25th anniversary year. We strive for a world where sexual and reproductive health and rights are fulfilled without discrimination, reaching the most vulnerable in the most complex situations. We recognize that the ICPD program of action is unfinished business. In the spirit of the decade of action and delivery to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in Agenda 2030, we commit to intensify our efforts and investments to lead global efforts to achieve 3 transformative goals. First, 0 preventable maternal deaths. Second, 0 unmet need for modern contraceptives. And third, 0 violence against women, including child marriage and female genital mutilation. As custodians of the ICPD program of action, we commit to being a stronger voice for those whose voices often go unheard, including the most marginalized women, girls, and young people. We commit to assisting countries in the more than 150 locations where we work to deliver fully integrated, people-centered sexual and reproductive health information and services in both development and humanitarian contexts. We will extend our UNFPA supplies program to 2030 and expand its scope as the main vehicle to end unmet need for modern contraceptives and increase the availability of essential reproductive health commodities. We commit to scaling up our prevention and response efforts to eliminate harmful practices against women and girls, including child marriage, female genital mutilation, and son preference within the global gender equality agenda. All of this takes adequate financial resources to meet the estimated gap of US $222 billion between 2020 and 2030 for achieving UNFPA's 3 zeros. We will accelerate our efforts to mobilize more diversified finances across the humanitarian development nexus to better meet the needs of affected populations. At the country level, we pledge to support country-led implementation of national commitments, including through the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework and the humanitarian response plans, and to harness United Nations and broader partnerships to achieve the 3 transformative results and the SDGs. We commit to support countries in addressing demographic change, including population aging and low fertility based on human rights and to the best available evidence. Our ambitious, achievable commitments will help countries and partners to accelerate action to deliver fully and finally on the ICPD and 2030 agendas by ensuring rights and choices for all. We pledge to leave no one behind.
Achieving gender equality and women's empowerment and upholding women's rights is a game changer for poverty reduction, inclusive growth, democratic governance, peace and justice. The Sustainable Development Goals cannot and will not be achieved until women, girls and young people are able to control their bodies and their lives and live a life free from fear and from violence. The power to choose the number, timing and spacing of children is a human right that can bolster well-being, economic and social development. And when people can exercise their rights, they thrive, and they do, and so do societies at large. When these rights are denied, people's ability to achieve their full potential is constrained, and economic and social progress is impeded. And that's why governments must invest in human capital throughout the life course, from birth to older age, and particularly in helping children and adolescents to develop their full potential. This also means giving young people a place at the table to contribute to the formulation, implementation, and evaluation of policies and programs, such as those that are related to job creation, employment, and in the end, the fulfillment of their aspirations.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take our seats. Thank you. Your Excellencies, Ministers, High Commissioners, the Director General of this Center, scientists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I said good morning. Good morning. How are you guys? Welcome. On behalf of the government of Kenya and the people of Kenya, I want to welcome all of you to this third RCMRD International Conference and the fourth AfriGeo Symposium here in Nairobi. And while you are in Nairobi, if you sang along with us the Africa anthem, there was a section that said that this is the cradle of humanity. And specifically, that particular paragraph was talking about Kenya. So, to all of you who've come from other continents, let me say on behalf of humanity, welcome home. This is where we all began from, and therefore, you're welcome home. I also want to say that I am very happy this morning because aside from my public duty, I am also a very proud scientist, and I'm happy to be amongst friends. Development leadership in our time is monumentally challenging work that is severely constrained from two quarters. First, constraint relates to the urgency with which we must optimally deploy existing resources to staff off ever-mounting demands and shortages. Related to this are not just the questions of increasing numbers of people, but also the conditions of poverty, inequality, and unemployment that stalk them. The second constraint relates to the fact that often policy is generated using the best available data, which sometimes falls short of the accuracy needed for efficient planning. This means that ordinarily planning used imperfect data and public policy left room for improvement. In turn, much needed opportunities, resources, and policies are not optimized, lending us to fall short time and time again. We are also challenged by the very real danger that human activity is overwhelming the Earth's resilience and ecological balance. In our quest to maximize available resources, we have overlooked the fact that a degraded environment is immensely dangerous for all of us. And this notwithstanding that we are still desperately vulnerable to natural disasters owing to poverty, inequality, underdevelopment, of resilience, and relevant knowledge. There is, in other words, widespread powerlessness in terms of our relationship with the earth and its resources on one hand, and the environment on the other. What developmental decision-making requires as a matter of urgency is the capability at the highest level to infuse the idea of sustainability into that of development in a manner that rewards society with prosperity, resilience, and intergenerational equity. We want to be able to harness our resources, optimize our efficiency, and trigger a virtuous circle of sustainable prosperity for generations. In the short term, we want to be emancipated from vulnerability to natural disaster, environmental adversity, and attendant climatic intricacies that frequently lay waste the achievements and the hopes of nations and peoples. This is especially true for our moment in Kenya, as we approach the penultimate medium-term plan of Vision 2030 and are catalyzing its attainment through the module of cross-cutting enablers of the President's Big Four plan. Our tremendous investment in the preconditions for the mass socio-economic uplift of our people must be ensured by greater accuracy and efficiency, deeper knowledge, and predictive capacity, and evidence-based decision-making. Whatever contribution you can make towards the achievement of these 4 priority policy areas, you ought to do it proudly for your country, for your continent, and for your people. Providing solutions in any of these developmental agenda items is our duty. It is my hope that you will rise to the challenge this week. The most impactful solutions to our greatest challenges are in this room. Earth observation and resource mapping are empirical scientific fields that improve the accuracy of planning and development planning by a tremendous magnitude. I'm excited to see the participants in this regional center has built with US government agencies, USAID and NASA, the EU and European Space Agency, and others to support creation of geospatial tools for value addition in decision-making processes. The government of Kenya has fully embraced digital data to help this country fast-track achievements in various fields. We have just undertaken an elaborate registration program for all Kenyans, and we will soon commence in the next month a census exercise carefully guided by spatial data technology. Further, I believe that satellite data and GIS systems are helping us design better housing facilities for Kenyans through improved spatial plans that contribute to the county integrated development plans. I am pleased to learn that through applications developed at this regional center, in collaboration with partners, we can now monitor crop conditions from planting to harvesting, and thus help the country manage food security. I challenge you to seek solutions to the problems of food distribution and market systems in the region to not only foster efficient trade, but also ensure that people are not going hungry in one region while there is surplus in another region. We are proud to host the 3rd International Conference of the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development, as well as the 4th Africa Geosymposium. As already indicated, dwindling natural resources coupled with climate change have contributed to ecological fragility that intensifies year on year. There is a strong movement urging greater focus on the anthropogenic dimension of climate change. A consequence of this depletion and stress is that many populations are experiencing or are prone to unprecedented vulnerability in terms of personal, economic, and other forms of insecurity. Government is challenging at best at these times, and under conditions of mass precarity, the challenges can be overwhelming. The theme of this event suggests that the way out of this disastrous turn lies in Earth observations for evidence-based decision-making. In other words, we are able in this forum to demonstrate the potential of digital data, analytics, and spatial information in efficiently addressing challenges from pollution mitigation, disaster preparedness, drought and famine, insecurity and conflict. I personally have experience in the power of geospatial information and data from Earth observations in generating accurate knowledge that can support sound planning and effective action. My PhD work drew on ASTER and Landsat data to show the extent of the impact of land use on the Saiwa Swamp Sanctuary, and we were able to identify and measure relevant variables with an accuracy that is simply empowering. With our rising population, intensifying urbanization and industrialization, we are going to be an even more water-stressed society, all things being constant. Pollution, drought, and conflict will result if scarce water resources are not managed efficiently. But Earth observation holds the key to proper resource mapping and planning, moving us from a position of acute powerlessness to one of tremendous empowerment. I therefore urge you to collaborate with government and public institutions in producing accurate data that can guide the development of effective solutions to problems besetting agriculture and land use, wildlife management, transportation and urbanization, pastoral and other water resources, housing, and resource exploitation, among others. I also encourage you to strengthen linkages with our research and higher education institutions, not only to empower them, but also to elevate and broaden our national capacity in this very critical field. At a personal level, I am a strong supporter of your work, and I assure you of the Kenya government's commitment to the agenda of Earth observations for evidence-based decision-making. This is why we are proud to host this Regional Center Africa Geo right here in Nairobi. And before I make my last statement, maybe it's just good for me to say two things. Number one is to say that society is moving to information or knowledge-based, technology-driven development. And as policymakers, the best policy interventions can be achieved if you have the most accurate information to work with. And the most accurate information is information that is researched, information that is backed by knowledge and evidence, so that we avoid guesswork and trial and error and myths. And part of wrong diagnosis and sometimes wrong interventions is not because the policymakers are stupid. It's because they are working with information that is either outdated or that is not researched and that does not have evidence behind it. And therefore, it is my position that the way into the future, how policymakers like myself will make decisions that would change our society and move us to another level and create interventions that manage our challenges and creates a better society will be informed to a great extent by the quality of information that we have from our researchers and from institutions and organizations like this one. And therefore, you occupy a very central position in the quality of decisions and interventions and policy decisions that policymakers will make if we get the correct, up-to-date, accurate information to work with. And I'm saying this from a position of experience. When we were working on drought, and I'm happy you have said this, when we were working on how to manage loss of livestock, because in my other life I was a minister for agriculture, and we thought long and hard, how do we provide an insurance scheme for our pastoralists? And it is when we got geospatial information on how do we trigger payments of insurance to our pastoralists, at what point, so that we don't make it subjective. We have accurate, up-to-date information on when we can declare drought and when we can declare it's time to intervene. GIS, geospatial information came in very handy. And last year, for example, we intervened in 5 counties using this technology and working with development partners. And we managed to reach many pastoralists who would otherwise have lost their livestock with no recourse. And therefore, that information is critical for decision makers like myself and others in governments to be able to make the right decisions at the right time in a way that is not subjective, but in a manner that is objective and driven by accurate information. We have just signed the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, AFTA. And we need a lot of information to make the subsequent decisions, because our contribution to trade worldwide from a continent that 1/5 of the population lives in is only 3%. And part of the decisions that we need to make going into the future is how do we contribute more? What interventions do we need to make? Because sometimes, if you're using information that is not accurate, you make the wrong interventions. You take the wrong policy decisions, and you end up in the wrong places often. And therefore, how do we, and this is something for the scientists here and the other people, how do we increase our productivity in this continent? How do we raise and how do we invest in the huge agricultural potential that we have in this continent? How do we reverse the food imports that comes into this continent by producing more? We need the benefit of science. We need the benefit of research to know in which areas, what crops, what kind of investments are required so that we can not only reverse the food imports that come into this continent and begin to export, but also what becomes our contribution to world trade. So these are real-time decisions that we have to make. And science and scientists like yourselves need to help us to make these decisions so that we do not lose time and we do not make the wrong decisions, and so that we end up with the correct prescriptions of solutions for what we must do. And so that's really my request to this institution. I have had a small intervention with the Director General, and knowing very well the value and the quality of the training that goes on in the training institute as part of this institution, I've undertaken to him that we will find, as Government of Kenya, what interventions we can make to make sure that the students who are here have access to grants and bursaries so that we can expand the numbers that are generated. And we can create more human capital that can help us make the correct decisions and provide interventions that would give us the right policy decisions. I've also agreed with him that we will find a mechanism under our public-private partnership program to see whether we can work together to provide housing and hostels so that students from other countries can also find admission in the college that is here. I am told at the moment it's mostly Kenyan students, and this being a regional center for 20 countries, we do not want to be selfish and make it a Kenyan institution. We want to share it with the rest of this great continent. It's now my pleasure to declare the third RCMRD International Conference and the fourth Africa Geo Symposium officially open. I wish you great deliberations and great outcomes. May the very good Lord bless you. Thank you.